Today we're driving the 2021 Chevrolet Colorado ZR2. I've been wanting to spend some time in one of these ever since they released the ZR2 in 2017. I actually went to a dealer, test drove one, and was considering purchasing one. But I ended up going with the Lexus GX 460. Still though, this truck has always had my interest. And this week we've done just about everything you would want to do in a Colorado ZR2. We've towed with it, we've gone off-road, we've done little 2-track forest trails, and we've driven quite a few street miles. So I'm excited to share with you my experience of what it's been like to live with this the last couple weeks. We've actually had this for 2 weeks, unlike our usual 1 week long press loans. So we've got just a little bit more experience than we usually do with most vehicles. New for 2021 isn't much. They've just done a little bit of a refresh to the front bumper, made it look a little bit more aggressive. You can see there just a slight change. The Chevrolet logo is all the way across, no more bow tie in the center. I think it still looks pretty good. I've always thought the ZR2 is a really good looking truck. It's aggressive. You've got these 31-inch Wrangler Duratrac tires, these massive rock sliders right here, a lot of underbody protection for the transfer case and skid plate, and then of course kind of the highlight of this truck are the Multimatic DSSV spool dampers, which are pretty awesome. This ZR2 is the crew cab with the short box. We have spray-in bed liner and pretty basic truck for most people's needs. The thing I like about the Colorado is that it is a smaller truck. It's not this huge, enormous thing. And even though Chevrolet has widened the fenders in this for just a little bit extra stability and aggressiveness off-road, it can still get through some pretty tight scenarios without any issues. It's rated to tow 5,000 pounds, which is less than the standard Colorado. I will say if you're going to be towing a lot with a truck, I'm not necessarily sure I'd recommend this ZR2. It does an okay job, but once you get close to that 5,000 pound towing capacity, it gets a little bit stiff, a little bit rough, and it kind of struggles a little bit, though it does the job. For occasional use, it'd do just fine. We have a nice, spacious, usable interior. These seats fold flat so you can store stuff on top. It's pretty high up and difficult to get in for most passengers, but that's part of the charm of a lifted off-road truck. Pretty standard looking Chevrolet interior. Nothing too fancy, nothing super special. You do get some niceties. You get a heated steering wheel and locking rear front differentials. There's also downhill ascent control. You get heated seats. And of course, in this ZR2, we have the 3.6 liter V6 made into the 8-speed automatic transmission. I'll show you what that looks like right here. .308 horsepower, 275 pound-feet of torque, dual overhead cam, set right over the front axle. The other option for the ZR2 is the diesel, and the diesel just feels a little bit underpowered, though if you're towing that might be a better option with just a little bit more torque. Basically, to sum it up, the diesel is great for rock crawling, and this V6 is better for higher speed stuff. Some Baja action, some high-speed off-road, going through the dunes. It really likes to rev, and it has a good amount of power doing it. All right, guys, let's take this for a drive. We've done quite a bit of off-roading in this week, but we don't have as much footage from it as we would like. But still, let's take you on a little bit of a off-road run here and see how we do. Turn traction control off. You can't disable traction stability control fully in 2-wheel drive. You have to be in 4-wheel drive. suspension is pretty well composed off-road. The harder you push it, the better it handles, the better it feels. It is a little bit stiffer than you might expect at first, but that's kind of the nature of these multimatic dampers. No paddle shifters, so you don't have a lot of control over your gears. You can put it into low mode here and select gears manually. And off-road, it actually feels pretty good. Turning radius isn't the best, so you're going to be doing some more 3-point turns than you would normally on trails. But luckily, this is a smaller truck that's just a little bit more nimble than some of the bigger offerings. There isn't really that much of a price difference between this and a Raptor, at least a base Raptor. So you kind of have to decide what you're going to be using a truck like this for. It's a nice size, but it's definitely not comparable to a Raptor. It's not as fun to drive, it's not as fast, not as powerful, it doesn't have quite the capability. It's kind of a do-it-all, but do nothing the best type situation. Turn traction control back on here. We have pretty impressive amounts of ground clearance. No trail cameras or anything like that. But this really does have a lot of capability off-road. It's pretty impressive what this thing can do. Even with the differentials completely open, unlocked, there's a lot of traction. The traction control system works everything out, figures out where to apply the brakes so that the power can be sent to the opposite side of the axle. It's pretty intelligent stuff, which is nice. Hear the traction control kicking in there. All of our diffs are unlocked. Does a nice job, even with everything open, managing traction and getting you out of a good articulation situation. Very easy, no stress. Switch into two-wheel drive here, turn off off-road mode, and see what this is like to drive on the street. So when I've been driving this week, instead of comparing it to a Raptor, I've kind of been comparing it to a Jeep Wrangler, because we have a very similar drivetrain. We have a V6, an 8-speed automatic, but we have road manners that are miles ahead of the Wrangler. This thing drives quite well on the road. It handles decently. These dampers, although just a little bit stiffer than I would like, keep things very well composed around corners. This truck actually handles pretty well. We'll show you guys around some corners here a little bit later. You have pretty much all the features and tech in here that you need. You have nice visibility, little fisheye mirror there to the left on the driver's side, no blind spot monitoring, and no keyless entry, which is kind of strange on a $43,000 truck. And also no radar guided cruise control. But they're keeping it simple and focused on the driving experience, depending on your perspective. Or they're just skimping on tech. This 8-speed automatic is super smooth. Does a really nice job picking gears, and on the highway tends to hunt around a little bit just because it's always trying to find that top gear. But when you're just driving around town or normally, it does a really nice job with its programming. Really hustling it, it shifts pretty quickly as well. Let's cut to a clip of me towing with a ZR2 earlier this week, and I'll show you what that's like. So how well does the Colorado ZR2 tow? Well, we have a steel auto transport trailer behind us, loaded up with our Honda 1000R side-by-side. Probably a pretty standard load for someone who's looking at a truck like this. The ZR2 is rated for 5,000 pound max towing capacity, and this is a little bit under that probably. Haven't added the numbers up exactly, but should be around 4,000 pounds. There's a decent amount of power here from the V6. The 8-speed automatic does a really nice job keeping the revs high, especially in tow haul mode. So you're cruising on the highway to usually over or around 3,000 RPM. Gas mileage has been pretty dismal. 10, 11, 12 mpg, nothing really that special. I think over the last 1,000 miles or so, we've averaged 12.5 miles to the gallon. So you're really not going to be getting good gas mileage. I'm not sure if that is partially due to the fact that we have an open trailer, and also that this is just a lifted, less aerodynamic truck. But we're definitely not getting very good fuel economy. My Lexus GX gets around 12 to 13 miles to the gallon in the same scenarios. Cruise control works great when you're just cruising on the highway or on back roads. Does a really nice job maintaining speed. It's not hunting gears all over the place. Hitting ABS there, getting a little bit slippery out. I definitely would want to upgrade the brake pads. I feel like this is a little bit underpowered for towing around 4,000 or 5,000 pounds, especially if it's fine on flat land towing, but if you're up in the mountains, up in the hills, we've definitely run into a little bit of fade here after a few heavy stops. Otherwise though, that pretty much sums up the ZR2 with its towing capabilities. I'm not sure this would be my first choice in class as a vehicle that I'd be towing with a lot, but if you need it in a pinch and for occasional use, it does just fine. Let's take the ZR2 around some corners and see how it handles on its own. The harder you lean into the suspension, the stiffer it becomes. It's progressive. It's actually really nice for on-road, high-speed performance driving because it's pretty minimal body roll. It stays very composed and predictable around the corners. We have independent front suspension and multi-leaf springs in the back. Like I said earlier, it's a little bit stiffer than I expected, but for the most part, it rides pretty well. Over really rough pavement, potholes, it just soaks everything up. And some of that harsher ride may come from these Goodyear Wrangler Duratrack tires. In my past experience, I've noticed that these are a little bit of a stiffer tire, and that may contribute to some of the firmness and bounciness from the CR2. On the highway, it's very comfortable. We're really only going to be getting about 18 miles to the gallon on the highway. This is rated for 16 in the city, 18 on the highway for 17 mpg combined. This week we have not averaged very well. About 13.8 in mixed driving, 12, 11 while towing. Yeah, you're not going to get very good fuel economy in this ZR2. But that's kind of how it is when you lift up the suspension and create a lot more wind resistance. And if you drive this thing 70 miles an hour, you'll probably expect to get around 19 miles to the gallon or so, but you're going to have to be hypermiling to get anything over 20. Besides that, though, it doesn't require premium fuel, so just regular. You can save a little bit of money at the pump there. It's very comfortable on the highway. You have great visibility from this high driving position. There's no strange wandering around like you get in a Jeep Wrangler. It drives a little bit more sophisticated for a truck in this class, especially with something that has this level of off-road capability. This ZR2 really does have an amazing amount of performance off-road. It does really well at rock crawling. It does really well at high-speed stuff. I would like to have just a little bit more fun and hoonability out of this ZR2. I think if you could kick this thing a little bit more sideways and turn off some of the traction control, and you had just a little bit more power to do some Baja sliding around, that would be fun. But again, you're limited with the powertrains that GM offers in this ZR2, and it would be kind of nice someday to get like a twin turbo V6 or a hybrid powertrain with just a little bit more power and oomph. So we'll see what happens, but I do feel like for the price, GM kind of dropped the ball on powertrains with this ZR2. I wish they could have come up with something that was a little bit more competitive with the Raptor and undercut on price, but it is what it is. Just a little bit of howling from those off-road tires. It's amazingly composed around corners. The handling is actually really good. The harder you push, the more it turns in. You really do have to rev out this V6 to get some power out of it. Let's talk about the brakes. So braking feel while towing, like I said earlier, I feel like I could use just a little bit more bite, a little bit more power. We ran into fade a couple times, but on the street in normal driving conditions, it feels pretty good. Let's do a little 0 to 60 here. It's no slouch. A little bit of a blip when you downshift with your thumb. This V6 does sound pretty industrial, but we're in a truck, so that's okay. Let's get one more taste here around some corners. Fun around a back road. You just kind of hustle it around. It feels nimble. I don't have a lot of negative things to say about the driving dynamics of this ZR2. It drives really well. It's very refined. It's comfortable enough. They've done a good job with this truck. I think what you have to think about with a truck like this is, do you want your fun vehicle to be rolled in all together with your daily driver? And, the ZR2 kind of does it all. It does the off-road thing, it does the daily driver thing. There are a few compromises here and there, and you're paying a little bit extra to get that versatility. You have to decide if that's worth it for you, or if you want something that's like a dedicated off-roader, like a side-by-side or a built-up Jeep or something, and then you want a daily driver, and you kind of split the difference. So, you know, I'm a little bit hard-pressed to recommend one of these brand new just because they are pretty pricey. I think a CPO used ZR2 is probably the way to go. You also get that extra warranty in case if there are any issues down the line. And this is very close in price to the Raptor. And I would like for this to compete with the Raptor, but in all honesty, it just doesn't. It's not even close. So it's kind of this middle child. I love the size of this Colorado. It drives awesome, but for 45 grand, that's a lot to bite off. Alright guys, well while we're just cruising here, let's do a quick sound system test. See what the stereo sounds like. It sounds okay. Definitely could use a little bit of improvement, but I mean, it's not blowing me. I think it's acceptable. It works. Drowns out some of the tire noise. That's all you need, right? All right, guys. Well, that's pretty much how I could sum up the Colorado ZR2. It does everything reasonably well. Nothing is class leading or best, but I think it's a really nice overall package. I really like the usability and the versatility that you get out of this truck. If you can find one at the price that works with your budget, it's actually a pretty good option. I prefer this vastly to the Toyota Tacoma. It just drives so much better and doesn't have that silly 8-speed transmission that hunts around. This has a 8-speed transmission that used to hunt around, but they fixed it. This is so much better. Really no complaints about that anymore. So I would probably swing for the V6 if you're looking at one of these. The diesel is nice, but unless if you're doing a lot of long distance driving, also that's kind of a weird thing when the AC kicks on, you get this like ghost noise. Anyway, unless if you're doing a lot of long distance driving and you really need that fuel economy from the diesel, this V6 is more fun, it's more powerful. The diesel feels just a little bit underpowered, and it's good for rock crawling, but this V6 can do it too. So anyway, my thoughts on the ZR2. Hopefully that adds some just some insight into what this thing is like to drive. Everyone's done videos on these things already, but figured I would give my 2 cents. And yeah, it's been fun to spend time in this week. I think I would be perfectly happy with one of these in the driveway. So take that for what you will. Thanks for watching, guys. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. I think that pretty much covers everything. Yeah, I would like be able to lock and unlock this with the door handle, but again, you have a key or you have a remote. But I've separated them because since you put the key into the ignition, this is always flopping around and making noise, and we can't have that for YouTube videos. We were out off-roading this the other day, and it got it super muddy. It took me an hour and a half to spray wash everything off with a power washer. It took forever. There are so many little crevices and little places for dirt to lodge underneath. And, you know, I think the ZR2 will just never be the same. There will always be dirt coming out of some little pore here and there. But, you know, that's okay. That's what it's for. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.